All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on tonight's webinar. We're going to be talking about maximizing your US student experience. So we're going to cover a number of topics, academics, career opportunities, internships, student life in general. So we're going to have a great conversation. We want this to be interactive as well, so feel free to share your questions in the conversation box, and we'll cover it at the designated Q&A section towards the end of the conversation. So my name is Murray Fraser. I'll be the host tonight. I attended Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas from 2012 to 2016. I was in a men's soccer program and played there for 4 years studying business, and had a wonderful experience as well. So what the goal of this chat tonight is going to be to give you all the information that will help you to make the most of your US university experience, whether you're just starting to explore studying abroad in the US or whether you're quite far down the application process in terms of whether as an athlete or as a regular student as well. So we hope to give you some valuable insights. To help us do that, we're joined by a special guest, Gretchen Steele from Randolph-Macon College. Gretchen is the international student recruiter at Randolph-Macon College, and she brings us a wealth of experience in getting students through the process, and we are really excited to hear her insights as well. So to get started, Gretchen, if you'd like to start by telling us a bit about yourself, your background, and your role at Randolph-Macon College.
Sure. It's very nice to meet everyone. Thank you for joining me today. I am the Assistant Director of Admissions at Randolph-Macon College, and that's in Ashland, Virginia, right outside of Richmond, the capital of Virginia. We are a Division III school, and so we're a bit of a smaller student body. I love that atmosphere. I attended Sewanee, the University of the South, for my undergraduate experience, so another smaller Division III athletic school. As the Assistant Director of Admissions here, part of my job is to work with both out-of-state students and international students, so students who do not come from Virginia originally, to help them kind of acclimate to the student experience at Randolph-Macon through the application and admissions process. I'm very excited to speak with you all this evening.
Brilliant, fantastic, Gretchen, thank you. So if you could start by talking about maybe why would you say is Randolph-Macon an excellent choice for an international student who's looking to study abroad in the US, and how does the kind of the college kind of create that positive environment for international students coming in?
Sure. I think a couple of key things that are really central to the Randolph-Macon experience in general, but particularly helpful to those acclimating to the U.S. for the first time are our location and the emphasis on student support here. As a much smaller college, we only have about 1,600 undergraduate students here. That allows us to have really hands-on experiences, allows our students to experience the fields that they're learning about in the classroom in real time while they're in school doing their studies. And it also allows them to make really strong connections with each other and with mentors that they'll find on campus. Our location is also really central to this experience. We are, like I said, just about 20 minutes outside of Richmond, Virginia. So being very close to a capital city, I think is really helpful for our students. It allows a wealth of not only opportunities from the government and political sense, but also just from a business perspective. There are a lot of companies headquartered in Richmond that provide our students with opportunities. We are also about a 90-minute train ride from Washington, D.C., which is the capital of our nation. So another great wealth of opportunity for our students. And we do have a train station on campus that allows our students to just hop on and hop off and access D.C. within, like I said, just about 90 minutes. It also takes students all the way up to Philadelphia, Baltimore, Boston, New York City, goes all the way up to Maine. So a lot of opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. Really connected to a lot of key cities in the US, and lots for, I guess, students to explore in their time at college there as well. Would you say, what support kind of services would a typical student have, whether they're international or also domestic as well, but what kind of support services are available? And when transitioning from, say, a high school environment to a college environment, there's a lot of challenges that will come in for students as well. But what kind of support do they usually get on campus?
Yeah, I think the transition from secondary school coming into a college or a university setting can be surprising to a lot of students because you have a lot more. Our dean of student life always says that you spend about 90% of your time in college outside of the classroom. That's not necessarily true in high school or in secondary school. You're spending most of your time in the classroom with other students, really kind of almost being forced to work on the material that you're learning. In college, you're going to have a lot more flexibility with your schedule. So there are a lot of resources on campus that help students acclimate to that environment. Whether you're coming from somewhere within the US or from somewhere different, it's going to be helpful to access resources like tutoring services. The Edge Career Center is a really valuable resource that helps connect students with postgraduate work and study opportunities. Accessing in things like even our Office of Disability Services, if there's something that you need accommodations for. There are a lot of different ways that you can connect with your campus resources, and that is one of the biggest things that I recommend to incoming students, no matter where you go to college.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you touched on the Edge as well. We're going to talk on the Edge program later on a little bit, but sounds like a really valuable resource as well. And I think one part of going from a high school setting into a college setting is that transition of going from being a kid into being an adult as well, and kind of looking after yourself and taking things on off your own back and making sure you go to class and attend all your classes and navigate that life as an adult and in a kind of new stage in your life as well. So having that support is going to be so important for students as they transition into that college setting as well. I guess a little bit different, but in terms of things like housing, setting up their kind of meal plans and stuff like that, into being an on-campus member, cultural integration. Is there anything you could add in terms of how Randolph-Macon would assist with that, and I guess with visas as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one beautiful thing about Randolph-Macon is that housing is guaranteed on campus for all 4 years that a student attends. Not all schools are able to do that, so I definitely recommend checking with all of the schools that you're interested in and seeing what their policies are for requiring and providing housing for all of the years that you'll be there. But Randolph-Macon is able to guarantee that you will have housing accommodations available on campus for every year that you're a student. One of those options is our international house. International students are not required to live in the international house, but it is an option if you want to sort of be with potentially other international students, or it's also open to students who are from the United States who are just interested in experiencing a more integrated sort of community with other international students that are here. So that's an option, but you can also live anywhere on campus, and that's guaranteed all 4 years. In terms of visa support and things that are a little bit more specific to the international student experience, that starts with me in the Office of Admissions. So I provide support for the initial I-20 process, and then I work hand in hand with our Office of International Education. They provide support for maintaining F1 student visa status.
Fantastic, yeah. And of course, with First Point USA, we do a lot of help with visas and stuff like that too. Can be a complicated process to navigate. It's something that's going to be new and confusing as well. So, navigating that correctly and in a timely manner is obviously going to be important if you're coming from overseas. So, moving on to kind of touching on the Edge program that you mentioned as well, career readiness, global opportunities, things like that as well. If you wanted to kind of give us an idea as to how that can assist with whether it's career coaching or resume building, just generally, I guess, setting yourself up for your post-college opportunities and what might be available to you after college.
Yeah, great question. So the Edge Career Center at Randolph-Macon is definitely one of our strong suits. They are consistently ranked within the top 15 or 20 career services centers in colleges and universities across the nation. So that is really a strong point for us, and something that Randolph-Macon does really well is making sure that students are prepared for their next steps, whatever that may be. And so for entering the workforce, our Edge Career Center provides a lot of resources, like you said, like career coaching, that one-on-one consultation kind of atmosphere, internship connections, postgraduate job placement connections, and preparations for graduate school. We do have some admission agreements with different graduate schools in different fields, so making sure that students are connected to those programs and making sure that they're staying on track if that's the plan that they want to do is really important. the thing to be aware of about career services is that all of those opportunities are voluntary. So students really do have to have the agency to access those and to know that they're there for them. One thing that I think is really special about the Career Center that we have here is that there is one element of it that is required for all students, and that is our Edge Career Boot Camp. Typically, students will take boot camp in their sophomore year while they're here, the second year that they're with us. And they will come to campus and spend a whole weekend in the Career Center doing mock interviews for the career that they're interested in. Participating in an etiquette dinner so that they know how to behave in a much more formal setting if that ever comes up in their future, and doing all kinds of different things to make sure that they're kind of honing in on those soft skills that can be applicable in any field.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And one thing is going to class and learning material about maybe your major that you want to get a job in eventually, but having the skills and ability to then find that transition, whether it's going to job fairs and finding some assistance to help you navigate that process, is always going to be a huge help to getting a job straight after college or helping you with your next steps and what you wanted to do. Would you say, are there any specific support systems for international students, whether that would be, say, I guess, job on campus or specifically for internships during their college career?
Yeah, so most of the offices at Randolph-Macon operate on a pretty individualized basis. And so no matter what background or what experience a student is coming from, they tend to want to work with those students in a very one-on-one kind of setting. So whatever your needs might be, they are going to work with you. And so our Edge Career Center does work very closely with international students. They'll do that one-on-one, they'll do it in a group setting, and they'll help them with the career fairs and different things like you were mentioning as well. So any opportunity that is open to domestic students that come from the United States is open to international students here as well. And so that includes help discovering internships, help discovering a post-grad job placement that will sponsor a visa. And that also includes helping students to find on-campus work opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess it's going to be different in everyone's situation depending on maybe perhaps if they're an athlete as well.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a difficult thing to achieve when you're in season and you're going through the rigors of maybe training and playing games at weekends. So certainly I think the spring semester for a soccer player, for example, if they're a fall sport, using that spring semester when you don't have that high workload of, still you have a season, but it's going to be less strenuous, and you have the opportunity to then branch out and find other opportunities, whether it's with the likes of the ED program and developing those skills as well. So touching on to going into the work experience, internships, I know we've covered a little bit already. Do you see many students that are going into, say, the OPT, the optional practical training extension to the student visa, taking that year, which is something that I did myself when I was at university, and finding that work experience that you can take advantage of from the government? Is that something that's quite common as well?
Yeah, we do have students that participate in curricular practical training and optional practical training. And our Office of International Education is the main support for helping students navigate those opportunities. The Assistant Director of the Office of International Education is going to be the main point of contact for making sure that you maintain your eligibility for those opportunities and that you can access them.
Fantastic. Would there be any, I guess, success stories of international students that have come over and gone through this program and that have had the chance to use these services and I guess gone on to their career after college?
Yeah, that's a fun question. So a couple of students come to mind. One of them is Benjamin Selamatic, who came to us from Bosnia. He interned actually in our office with our marketing department, but helping with the admissions side of kind of marketing and social media management. And since graduating, has now transitioned to being a full-time employee of the marketing department at Randolph-Macon. So he's a really strong success story. I love seeing him around campus, even now taking photos for our social media accounts and assisting with the kind of marketing side of things on a much larger scale. So he has really been able to turn his Randolph-Macon experience into some serious post-grad success. Another student that comes to mind is Zareen Ahmed, who graduated in 2024 and had an internship at an engineering firm here, and was able once again to turn that into a full-time opportunity that sponsored a visa visa for her. So definitely some really strong success stories coming out of RMC and students that we're really proud of.
Brilliant. And I think it's always interesting when you listen to those stories, because as an international student, when I went over, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and you either go to undecided as a major, or you're just kind of still finding your feet in terms of what you want to do with your career. So um, services like that can give you that pathway, and then you end up finding yourself going down a route where you find a passion that you have, or perhaps the university can assist you with finding that kind of next step. And it's amazing where it can lead you, I guess, if you're going in and having no idea where you're going to end up. So really, really cool to hear those stories for those two students. Would you say that Randolph-Macon can be in a position, or is in a position, that they can assist with connecting students with employers, whether that's in the region or whether it's in other cities as well? Is there any kind of programs or assistance that they have?
Yeah, definitely. So there are definitely some employment partners that we have within like the Ashland area, which is the small town where Randolph-Macon is located. So we have plenty of students who do internships or post-grad employment opportunities, or even work opportunities while they're enrolled in school in the Ashland area. But there are also a lot of opportunities a little bit further afield. So in Richmond, there are 8 Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered within that city. So that provides kind of a wealth of opportunity for our students. One of the things that the Career Center does here is they provide a program called Access C-Suite, which allows students to go and meet with the CEOs, the CFOs of those large companies that have seen a lot of success. So just being able to access people at that high of a level is really helpful for a lot of our students.
Excellent. My light just went off in the room. Everything went dark for a second there. Hope you can all see me now. So thank you, Gretchen. In terms of, I guess, moving into student life, international student support section, where I guess this would be helpful not just for Randolph-Macon students, but also I guess any student wherever you end up in terms of that student lifestyle. Could you discuss things about like extracurricular activities on campus, I guess we touched on housing already, but dining, clubs, anything that a student can also just kind of get their teeth into when they get onto campus?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the beauties of going to a smaller school like Randolph-Macon is that you're not ever going to be competing with 25,000 other people to be involved in a club or an organization that just interests you kind of casually. So at Randolph-Macon, we have over 100 different clubs and organizations that are run by students that allow them to engage with all different kinds of interests at all different levels that they might have. So we have different clubs and organizations that cater to just kind of hobbies that students have: crafting, esports, video games, intramural sports, all kinds of different things like that. We also have a lot of clubs and organizations that cater to students' academic interests. So there may be academic societies that you want to access. And then there are also plenty of organizations that cater to students' identities. So things like our Black Cultural Society or our International Interest Group, different opportunities to get involved and continue building the community that you have that's so important to you from your background.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting when you go to college as a student. You're going by yourself, but very quickly you can suddenly expand your network in a space of weeks, whether that's as an athlete or just as a student, where you have all these facilities and all these clubs that you mentioned as well, and a chance to really diversify all your connections and to really get to know a lot of people. And I think it's such a short period of time. Even after a couple of weeks, you could be speaking to so many new friends, and that's where you foster those relationships you'll have for the rest of your life. So I see a couple of questions coming through, which is fantastic. Kevin discussed financial support. We're going to touch on that. We're to have a section. We're going to talk about the financials in a second as well. And I guess with the housing, we'd already touched on part of that with Jeff's question on campus regarding the housing. Do you know if the athletes are housed with their specific teams, or are they kind of in with regular students as well?
That's a good question. A lot of the time, athletes will just kind of congregate together naturally. So they might kind of like find each other based on a similar interest and decide to room together. Coaches are also really helpful and supportive in terms of pairing up students that might be good matches as roommates for each other. So that can be a helpful avenue to go through, but not necessarily. We don't have one athletic dorm, and we don't have one section that's like sectioned off just for our soccer students or for our football students. Everybody's pretty integrated together, and everybody has all the options open to them.
Yeah, I found that, at a small school myself, and it could be the same where your dorms are quite close together. You're never too far away from other teammates or other friends, and especially with if it's by class, and maybe the freshman dorms are all going to be kind of close together or in a close-knit community as well. So it can be good also just branching out with other people and getting to know people who maybe are different backgrounds and everything like that as well. So with just to go back to the international kind of student support, student life kind of section, when we talk about support services for mental health, academic success, career planning, we touched on a little bit too, but in terms of mental health and those things, if a student needs that support, is that something that would be available?
Yeah, great question. We do have counseling services that are completely free for student use, included in your tuition costs. So there's no need to worry about payment for those services or insurance billing or anything like that. That's just something that's included in the student experience. And I would definitely encourage students to access those services at least once or twice while you're in college. Regardless of how you feel the severity of your feelings are. I think it's so helpful just to kind of talk through any anxieties you're having, any homesickness, any challenges you might be facing. And at Randolph-Macon specifically, that can happen through a licensed professional mental health counselor, maybe for some of those more intensive needs. But that can also be accessed through a peer wellness advisor. So we do have some students on campus that are trained to assist students with some of those issues that come up really frequently, things like homesickness or academic stress in the classroom. I have finals coming up and I'm so nervous and stressed about them, and I just want to talk through it. Those peer wellness advisors are there to assist with those things. But if you ever want to talk to somebody who is a licensed professional counselor about those topics as well, you absolutely can.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. I couldn't agree more with everything there. What would you say, what resources are available to help students maintain healthy academic and personal balance in terms of, making sure that you're kind of getting your academics done on time, whilst also still getting the chance to experience everything that's good about college and that helps you along that kind of journey?
One thing that is really great about Randolph-Macon being a smaller school is that your professors are going to be a personal support to you. They're going to act as mentors for you. And so I think that's especially pertinent when it comes to academic success. They're going to notice if you're not showing up, and they're going to notice if the quality of your work has decreased, and they're going to ask you about it and check in with you and make sure everything's okay. So I think that's one resource that's really important to make sure you're really taking advantage of, is just the professor that's in the room with you. That person wants to get to know you, and they want to be a resource for you. At Randolph-Macon specifically, however, we do have a few resources that are specific to academic success. We have our Higgins Academic Center, which provides peer tutoring and also just academic support in a more general sense. If you just need somebody to sit with you while you're kind of planning out your next few weeks, they'll do that for you. We also require a 1-credit course for all incoming students called Yellow Jacket Strategies for Success, where you are teamed up with a small group of students that are also incoming, and you learn how to access all of these resources that I'm mentioning, and you also learn how to plan and prepare for your academic success in the coming years.
Excellent. So I think the important thing to know is that you're never going to be alone in anything that you're doing at college, are you? You're always going to have so much resources to use, and I think it's really important to maximize how much you use all of the things that are on offer to you at every college that you're at. So yeah, great answer and really good information. So there's been a few questions on the kind of admission scholarships and things like that. So we'll jump into the next section regarding all things financial aid and whatnot. So I guess initially touching on the application process for international students, how different that may be or maybe not be from a US domestic student. How does that application look like for internationals?
Yeah, great question. So we try to keep it as straightforward as possible. There are a couple of additional pieces that pertain to international students. So we are available on the Common app. We are also available on rmc.edu. So we have an application that is specific to our website. You can use either one. We don't have a preference in the admissions office. Just whatever you're doing for other schools, you're welcome to apply the same plan for Randolph-Macon. That application is going to consist of the same things for international and domestic students. That's demographic information, some academic history, your secondary school transcripts, a personal essay, and then we'll ask you what interests you in Randolph-Macon in particular. Most students see that final question as a bit more of a short response, so just a couple of sentences rather than a full additional essay. We don't want you getting bogged down with that. We will also have an activities section, so if you play any sports, if you do anything outside of the classroom that you enjoy, even if it's just a hobby, I encourage you to put it there. And then we will also ask for the international student application for financial assistance as part of a completed application. So that will allow our financial aid team to assess for eligibility for any institutional grants. And if English is not your first language, we will also require evidence of English proficiency. That can come from IELTS, TOEFL, Duolingo, SAT, ACT, a lot of different options there.
Yeah, excellent. So we touched on and discussed the required documents and things like that. I guess for international students, there's probably requirements for things like immunization records or a copy of passport and things like that. I assume would be the case in order to get like the I-20 document. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So kind of some of these things will come after the point of admission, so we can assess a student for admissibility before acquiring every single piece that we'll need to process and begin the I-20 process. But yes, copy of the passport will be required. Evidence of sufficient funding is required to start the I-20 process. A few different things, a few different steps will happen there.
Excellent. So onto scholarship, financial aid opportunities. Obviously being Division 3, there's not the athletic component to that, but it doesn't mean that there's not going to be opportunities for earning financial aid and some funding as well. So you want to discuss and touch on some different options for students in terms of what they can do to help fund their college tuition at Randolph-Macon?
Absolutely. So at Randolph-Macon, the biggest piece of financial aid for most incoming students is an academic scholarship. We review all applicants for merit-based scholarships at the time of admission. So there's no additional application that a student would need to provide in order to access those funds. The biggest academic scholarship that we offered this year was $32,000 per year. That cut our cost of attendance nearly in half for a lot of students who qualified for that scholarship. But there are other levels of academic scholarship that can be accessed as well, usually in the $20,000 to $30,000 range per year. So that's a really helpful resource. International students, unfortunately, cannot apply for additional funding through the U.S. government. But our Office of Financial, our financial aid office will also assess eligibility for institutional grants at the time of reading that financial aid application, which is due at admission as well. So that hopefully expedites that process for you.
Yeah, that's excellent. And in terms of like, is there anything in terms of work study? We touched on employment on campus, but is that something that they can earn money to then obviously reduce their costs? Maybe by a small amount, but at least it kind of goes towards those fees and things like that. Is that an option?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that work on-campus employment option is not necessarily going to show up on the financial aid notification that you would receive after admission. So that's not going to be a line item that's listed there, but that is something that many of our international students do. In fact, I'm thinking of one student who's here now who has 2 on-campus jobs and is preparing to start a summer job at the end of this semester as well. So he's been very proactive in securing those employment opportunities here. And many of our international students do have on-campus employment that helps with their tuition costs.
Yeah, I remember back in when I was at Trinity, and there's it can be a whole range of different things in terms of what could be out there. It could be something very simple like working in the athletic center, covering the gym while people are working out and making sure everyone's safe, or it could be something perhaps that could be related to your major in that kind of line of study. I guess every college will have different opportunities, and but they're always there for international students to seek out when they get on campus. Would you have any tips or any advice, I guess, for international students when they go through this admissions process or application process? Anything that kind of helps them complete the application to a higher standard, or at least just get the everything done correctly? Is there anything you can advise for that?
Yeah, I think definitely being communicative throughout the process. If you have questions, don't sit on them. Let me know. I'm happy to help. And it can be a confusing process. So no question is too small. I definitely appreciate the chance to talk with students and work with them one-on-one, even at the admission stage. I think in the application itself, the most daunting part of things tends to be the personal essay for most people. So when you get to that section, you'll see that there are quite a few different prompts that you can choose from. Most schools will use the same prompts, and they're very open-ended. So you can really write about pretty much anything that is of interest to you that you want to share with an admission committee. So a lot of students will write about something that they're passionate about, or potentially about an experience that they've had that they feel was really important in their life, and has shown them how they're going to reach their goals, what those goals are, all kinds of different things that students write about. And I love reading that portion of the application. The activities section of the application, I think, is also something that can be confusing to students, because maybe if you just have one or two things to list there, it may not feel like enough. But please just rest assured that it is enough. You've done it. You've completed secondary school, and we're just excited to see the things that you're passionate about in and outside of the classroom.
And we're back. Thanks, Gretchen. It's always a tricky one, especially coming out of, for example, the UK or wherever you are in the world, and you approach one of these applications for the US college, and it's maybe some questions that you've never seen before. There's things that aren't maybe particularly related to the system in the UK or internationally as well. And I think just having the being able to reach out and ask those questions, you'll be able to find a way through it. If there's a question on an application form that you can't answer or can't progress for whatever reason, then there's always someone at the school that's going to be able to assist. In this case, Gretchen, you're the person to help with this. Are there any? This is maybe a different kind of question, but are there any kind of not to do's when going through the application process? Is there anything that might stand out to you that would be it's best not to do that, or that might harm your application anyway?
That's a good question. One thing that I think a lot of colleges are seeing is pretty blatant chat GPT use. So I would definitely caution against using an AI generator for the essay, because it is unfortunately obvious. And then just, making sure that you are putting your own personal effort into that essay portion. I think that's the thing that I enjoy reading most in an application. So making sure you're working within the word count limits and things like that, and not just writing a couple of sentences to get it out of the way, but rather really kind of putting your heart into it is really, really great to see.
Yeah, you want to see what differentiates people and make someone stand out as a candidate. Grades are one thing, and SAT scores or any other scores, but getting to know a candidate is going to be much more helpful to see if it's a good fit, I guess, for the college, and for their potential success as a student as well. So great information, Gretchen. Thank you for everything. I want to jump into some questions now to kind of go through some of these things, and for specific questions that we have in the chat. So in terms of we've got a question about sports scholarships. So again, different for Division 3 because there's not that sports scholarship element to it in terms of athletic aid. So with Randall-Macon, and feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong here, Gretchen, but it's all going to be academic, and perhaps then the financial form that you're going to fill out that would maybe assist with that as well. Do you know, are we able to cover anything about the differences between the kind of Division 3 to Division 2 and Division 1 in terms of the scholarship structure?
Sure, yeah. So, yeah, big thing to keep in mind about Division III athletic schools is that they are not allowed to offer athletic-based scholarships. So, the scholarships that a student receives to attend a Division III school are going to be solely academic or potentially need-based, based on the family's financial situation. And so that is one major difference from a Division III to a Division II to a Division I school. Another thing to keep in mind that I think is a strength of a Division III athletic experience is that you really get that student athlete balance in a really healthy way. So Division III schools do really prioritize students being students and making sure they're successful in the classroom as well as in their chosen sport.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I had a wonderful student athlete experience in Division III. A big supporter of Division III. I think it's a great balance that you get. In the season, you're going to be competing at a high level, and Randolph-Macon. We talked about this before we jumped on the call, but the conference, the Old Dominion Athletic Conference, is full of some great schools, great programs. You guys won the basketball national championship a couple of years ago.
2022, yes, we did.
So the on-campus atmosphere must have been pretty excited about that, and everything that came with it. So a huge achievement. And yeah, some other good schools, Washington, like we spoke about, Roanoke and Lynchburg as well. Some really competitive programs in that conference. So you're going to get great athletic experience as well as that kind of balance between your academics, being at a really high level as well. Question from Alfie around the accommodation, which we touched on. In terms of changing your accommodation year on year, would a student ever have the same accommodation, or would they likely then change it as they work through the years? And
Yeah, that's a great question. Most students change what residence hall they live in year over year. And part of that is because most students move off campus over the summer. And so it's easy to switch it up, and you might want to have a different roommate year after year, different things like that. Another reason that students do that is just preference, because typically at a lot of schools, the older you get, the more options you have for your residence halls. So at Randolph-Macon in particular, there are some apartment style residence halls that open up when a student is a junior or a senior in college that are not available to them in freshman and sophomore years. So those tend to be the more desired residence halls, and so students do tend to move.
I think pretty much a large majority of US colleges are going to have freshman students, first-year students on campus. For us, it was 3 years on campus, and then our fourth year we lived off campus as well. And again, we moved through different dorms year on year out as well into different accommodation, which is fun. And if you can change your roommate as well if you wanted to, but if you wanted to room with an athletic teammate, then I guess there's that option too. But it's always good to go through that stage of going through a different year in different place and get a different kind of experience on a different part of campus as well. So a question on the I-20 process. So we talked about how the visa assistance that we're going to get in terms of you do your application, you get admitted, then you start the actual onboarding process in terms of finalizing some documentation, and the goal is to get that I-20 document to start the visa process. Could you talk about how to get the I-20 and then what would happen then after you get your I-20 as a student?
Sure. So there are a few steps that you'll have to go through to kind of get to that point. And so I recommend, persistence in all of that, and getting started early, definitely, because there are definitely several steps that you have to go through to get to the I-20 and then get to your F1 visa appointment and then get over here. But the first thing is going to be, of course, choosing the school that you've been accepted to, that you want to attend. You'll pay an enrollment deposit at that school. That can vary by college that you're choosing. At Randolph-Macon, it's $400, and it applies directly to your first tuition payment. So it's not a random extra fee. It's just an early deposit to kind of secure your place at Randolph-Macon. So that's the first step. From then, we'll move into the financial aspect of things. U.S. regulations require proof of liquid funding in order to begin the I-20 and F1 visa process. So for us, that means filling out a statement of financial support and providing documentation that shows that the student has available the funding for the first year of school. So whatever the remaining balance after financial aid is, that's the amount that the family or the student sponsors need to provide documentation for. So that kind of begins the I-20 process. From there, we move into, like you were saying earlier, looking at that passport page, making sure that we have the student's name, address, contact information all correct. And from there, we can move into actually issuing that initial I-20. After the initial I-20 goes to the student, that student is then responsible for setting up an F1 visa appointment. That's where my colleagues in the Office of International Education step in and make sure you know the steps for that.
Brilliant. And again, with first point as well, is something that we have experience with as well, and it's always going to be able to lend a helping hand with getting you started on your visa process as well, and getting to that interview and ultimately getting accepted to start your US journey. A good question from Jeff: is there a limit to what an international student on a visa can earn through work, and do they have to work on campus and not outside of the college? And there's a few obviously visa restrictions with hours per week and things like that too. What do you know about the kind of perhaps limits, or what your potential earnings could be, I guess, of working on campus?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there definitely are some restrictions depending on your individual situation. And so I don't really want to give any blanket statements to that, but definitely when you are a current student, our Office of International Education does regular check-ins with our international students to make sure that what they're doing in terms of work on campus, they're eligible for and is within the parameters of their visa. So you would definitely be in good hands working with that.
Brilliant. So coming from the UK, will GCSEs cover the TOEFL? I guess if you're from an English-speaking country as your first language, would that then bypass the need for an international or English-based test?
Yes, great question. Yeah, GCSE absolutely covers that.
Great. Are A-levels / BTECs, your sixth form English and learnings in England, are they taken into account when looking at scholarships in terms of what GPA that would be at?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so A-levels and BTECs are taken into account. So we'll kind of do a conversion process on our end to see what your A-level scores and BTECs are equate to on our 4.0 GPA scale. And then from there, we're looking at the entirety of your academic profile to determine a scholarship level. That's a great question.
I guess an extension to that question, which I can add, maybe if, let's say a student has completed their GCSEs, but they're still studying their A-levels at the time when they made their application, is that something that would still then come back into account, or would the acceptance can be given before they finish their A-levels, I guess?
Yeah, the acceptance can be given before they're finished. That's honestly the case for probably most of our students who are coming from the US. They have not finished their secondary school just yet. And so if that's the case for you, that's perfectly fine. We'll request a final official transcript at the time of enrollment for the student, but it's not necessary for admission.
Awesome. What would be the average GPA, and also I guess the minimum GPA that's possible to get admitted or accepted into Randolph-Macon?
Yeah, we don't have a set minimum GPA that's required for admission. We try to be as holistic as we can in the applicant review process. That said, we encourage you to do your very best in the classroom. And our scholarships range from students with, a 3.0 GPA up to above a 4.0 GPA, depending on the rigor level of the courses that they've taken. So there are definitely opportunities for students at lots of different academic levels.
Yeah, awesome. And then with a couple of questions talking about, say, Division I academics as well. It's every school will have their different minimum GPAs or possibly entry requirements that they'll have. And if you're comparing a whole range of them, then they're going to be very different from one end to another. So average GPAs can fluctuate, and as you said, Gretchen, the school might not take that wholly as the only thing that they're going to look at when they admit a student. They may look at a number of different factors that could also help out. If a GPA was lower but their test score was high, perhaps then that might help them out. Would we be able to apply our child for the student loan company in the UK? Do you know of any international student loan companies that are now operating? Obviously, as an international student, that wouldn't be eligible for FAFSA or for American student loans.
Yeah, that is not something that I know a whole lot of detail about. I think that our financial aid office would have a little bit more information on loan opportunities for international students, but you are correct that they are not able to come through our federal government, unfortunately. So that does take kind of an avenue out of the picture.
And great question from Isaac as well, talking about the Indian curriculum. I guess would the admissions team look at all different countries' admissions in terms of their school curriculums and assess that compared to, I guess, once it's translated over into the US system, and then assess a GPA from there?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll take any country's transcripts into account. Anywhere that you have attended school, we'll look at those transcripts and evaluate them and kind of convert them to a U.S. Grading scale, so that we can see how that would equate to studies here.
Brilliant. Just checking if there's any more questions that we can help with. We touched on the kind of a lot of different parts about the application process, of course. In terms of, we've got a question just about the general process of US universities, whether that's through the Common App or I guess directly through each college's own application facility as well. How would you touch on the kind of, in a brief way, to discuss the general application process?
Yeah, in general, I would say when in doubt, look at the website of the school that you're interested in, because if they're not on Common App, they'll have an application listed on their website. And if they are on the Common App, then they'll have that link on their website. We have both, so students can apply through commonapp.com or they can apply through rmc.edu, which is just our website. And so a lot of schools will offer both options. A lot of schools may only offer one. So I just recommend looking at the website of the school that you're interested in, reaching out when in doubt. If you get stuck on the application or if you get locked out for some reason, there should be someone on the other end who's happy to help you.
Yep, perfect. And then question on the SAT score. Yes, that would act as an ACT equivalent. It's, I guess you take one or the other. Maybe some people might take both of them, but especially for international students, the SAT tends to be the one that's more accessible, perhaps. Covered, but they kind of work in tandem.
Yes, yeah, we'll take either, we'll take both, whatever you've done and would like to report, you are more than welcome to. And then again, if English is your first language, this is not a requirement, but it is an option. So if you have an SAT score that you're just particularly proud of, you're more than welcome to report it to us. It's not going to have a huge effect on the admission or scholarship process, but it is an option.
Fantastic. And just finally looking through some questions for Ayoisias, I would definitely suggest looking in or reaching out. There's going to be a link after we follow up with this discussion. There'll be a link for a call where you can book in a consultation. I think that would definitely be helpful in your case to answer your question specifically regarding the GCSEs and in terms of going to the US. I think that'd be a really helpful resource. So look out for your email. There'll be a note with more information on that as well. Will anything be affected in terms of not having a good GPA, but your SAT score is going to be higher? Is that something that would then maybe not replace it, but certainly give you a better chance if your GPA was perhaps lower?
Yeah, this is a great question. And so that is definitely something that we would take into account. And another thing that might happen if your GPA is a little bit lower than where you would like it to be, I always recommend that students, provide some sort of written addendum to their application. There are some optional questions on the application that just ask a little bit open-ended, are there any additional circumstances that you would like taken into account when reviewing your application? If there was a moment in your secondary school career where you had a personal tragedy, or you had something really challenging happen to you, or you went through a mental health challenge and you feel comfortable disclosing that and you feel like it affected your academics, that's definitely something that I recommend doing, just to provide that additional context to your application. If there is something like that affected your academic performance and then you develop some strategies to improve, we would love to hear about that as well. Another thing that might happen is that we might request additional grades from you. So if you've not completed secondary school just yet, we might request first trimester progress report or a first semester progress report to see how this year is going for you before sending you a full evaluation of your application.
Fantastic. So I think we've covered off a lot. I'm going to run through maybe one or two more just to close out here and give our closing statements. So will difficulty of a curriculum be taken into consideration during an application?
Yes, yeah. So if you have had the chance to take any really rigorous courses, like I know some students take those international baccalaureate courses, that will definitely be taken into account when evaluating the application. And most schools will send us what's called a school report when they're sending your academic transcript over to us. So we're able to see kind of the level of the courses that you've been taking and things like that.
Awesome, that's really helpful. And then just a question regarding the first point, I guess dashboard, which would be if your Duolingo score compulsory, not compulsory, but if you were to attend a college in the US that where your home country or your passport country is not English first language, then you're most likely going to be asked to fill out some sort of, or do an English language test, whether that's Duolingo or a TOEFL or IELTS and things like that too. I hope that helps. Gretchen, it's been really fun. Thank you so much for all of your insights. Really helpful to gain all the knowledge about everything about Randolph-Macon and in terms of the college application process, the scholarship, and everything like that too. So really do appreciate you jumping on, and I hope everyone found this really useful and helpful during their process.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mary. It was great to meet you and great to chat with everyone here.
I totally agree. So thank you so much and for your time. And just before we sign off, a quick reminder for learning more. We're going to be sending out some follow-up resources in terms of brochures and a link for a consultation link as well. And I'm sure that this video will be made available on YouTube or some other services in the very near future. So keep an eye for an email, and you'll get all the information that you need in there. So again, guys, thank you for joining, and really enjoyed your company and talking to Gretchen. And I really hope that was helpful in your journey wherever you may be.